KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, KMWC, Bethany. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, will Social Security ever get fixed? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Hey, if you got a question for me, you can always go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. You know the drill. Go up to the top of the web page. There's a link to Ask Prudent Money, and you can send your question in. We will get that question answered for you. One of the reasons we do that is to make sure that you've got a good resource to get information, and we believe that is why that resource is a good one. So we make sure that we can get you squared away if you got questions and get you answers. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, today on Prudent Money, I want to welcome a special guest and personal finance columnist for over 40 years. Scott Burns' name might sound familiar to you. You might know him from his regular personal finance columns in the Dallas Morning News. He is here today to talk about some issues we face individually as a country and maybe talk a little bit about some personal finance tips. Scott, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing great. You know, I want to talk about your website for a second because we always talk about making sure that people have good resources to go to and get information. And I do believe at scottburns.com you have everything you've ever written.
That would be difficult, but I have a lot of what I've written and everything written since 2018. But actually, I was looking for something that I haven't got, which we can talk about later, but it's about how an act of Congress was repealed 1 year after it was passed. Doesn't happen very often, but it's very germane to what's happening right now.
Yeah, we definitely need to pick up on that towards the middle of the program for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Social Security. That's quite the issue as well, amongst a lot of issues, really. I'm going to summon the Supreme Grand Poobah, and you'll explain what that is. I thought while we waited, though, we could talk about how Social Security gets taxed in the first place. I mean, how does the trust fund, what's left of it, work, and employment taxes work together? I mean, it's kind of a toxic combination. Talk a little bit about that.
Social Security was created with a lot of illusion because it was sold to people who didn't like welfare. So it was always couched in terms of a trust and of a retirement plan as though you were saving for yourself. Actually, it was social insurance which distributed risk and provided a pension. But uniquely, it is separately financed from the rest of the federal government. So it is a standalone thing, which a lot of people don't understand, and that's important for a number of reasons. One is that when people talk about going away altogether or Social Security ending, that is BS. It can be reduced to the revenues coming in, but not further. And currently, once the trust fund is exhausted, the revenues would have to be, the benefits would have to be reduced to meet the revenues. Now, even that is a bit of an illusion because the money that pays the benefits that's currently coming out of the trust fund is only going to get to be larger and larger amounts. So while the trustees say the trust fund will be exhausted in now 2033, the pressure is on today because the trust fund has been being emptied for, I think, about 8 years. I can't remember the exact number. And each year it's going to get bigger. So each year it's adding to the existing federal deficit. The federal government has to come up with the money for the benefits from some source that isn't actually the trust fund, which means they have to borrow it or print it. So we're going to be under increasing pressure, not in 2033. It's not going to be a magic event that happens all of a sudden. It will be slow pressure year after year. If we have a recession, it's really going to make the deficit skyrocket.
Yeah, and I had heard that about that time frame in the lower 30s, that we're looking at about a 30% haircut or so. Is that correct?
I don't think it's that high. I think it's more like the numbers I've seen have been like 23%. And again, that changes over time. You have to think of this as kind of original sin. When the program started, it wasn't funded. So it's been carrying an unfunded liability since Social Security was created in the late 30s. And it's compounded over time, and it's been enlarged by changes in benefits, improvements in benefits, expansions, etc. So, and we keep living longer. You know, we could solve the problem of Social Security immediately if people would just volunteer to die sooner. But, you know, I've asked people about that in speaking events, and no one has ever raised their hand.
Yeah, imagine that.
Oh, yes, Mr. Burns, yeah. I want to die today. Where do I go? No one ever does that.
Well, you bring up the Supreme Grand Poobah in a lot of your writings. Talk about who that is, and my question to His Eminency is, what would you do to solve the Social Security problem? Well,
okay. First thing, the ink stain, the Supreme Grand Poobah. Think of him as my alter ego. I'm just an ink-stained wretch, you know. I'm one of those hateful journalists who carps and complains and delivers bad news, and so, you know, and encounters constant frustration with a world of people doing irrational things. So the Supreme Grand Poobah is who I would be if I could actually control things. And, of course, I'd be very eccentric about it. You know,
of course.
I wouldn't allow people who chew gum to exist. And, you know, well, I might not be that cruel, but I'd send them for re-education. But it's how I offer ideas that are, you know, a little beyond the pale. And so this idea was, you know, very simple. And the Supreme Grand Poobah is full of good, very simple ideas. Congress is working against, you know, one of the real miracles of existence, compound interest. They're always betting that they will be able to do something against something that's growing all the time. The way to counter it is to give each child a fund at birth that will grow to enough money to provide them with a lifetime income at retirement. So I worked out the rough numbers for that. And they have to be rough because you're dealing with doubling times and you're dealing with a long period of time. But it could be done at the price of well under the cost of an average new car. I can't remember what the actual numbers are that I calculated, but it's entirely doable. It's the same thing as a grandparent who wants to help a grandchild. So it could be done. And all Congress would have to do is decide on make a 100-year commitment. Every year for 100 years, we are going to fund the birth of each new child in the United States. And you might ask, okay, wouldn't that be an awful lot of money? Well, in fact, it turns out to be kind of something that could be handled easily within the inheritance tax of the United States, which now, by the way, if this current bill passes, it will only affect estates over $30 million.
Unbelievable.
So why not ask the wealthy to give and fund the next generation? It wouldn't cost that much, and it could actually be incented by giving them a double credit. So, for every childbirth that you provide a wealth fund for, you'll get double credit against your estate. That would make a change in where charitable giving goes, but it'd probably be a worthwhile price to pay for security. It could also, somebody could do it. Mark Zuckerberg, he says he wants to alleviate problems for children in the future. Well, he could start it. He could decide that his charitable fund was going to fund all the births in one hospital system for an unlimited period of time. He's got the money to do it.
Just get a few of those wealthy guys together and knock it out, right?
Well, I think it'd take more than a few. One of the illusions is that we can eat the rich, but I did a column on that a long time ago, and it turns out we'd run out of food pretty early. I think it's within 6 months.
Not good.
I should redo that because there's a lot more wealth now. But
well, let's talk a little bit. You said a second ago that if we had something like a recession, that would actually speed up that point that we get Social Security in worse shape than it is today. Let's talk a little bit about tariffs. Talking about something that could usher in a recession, actually usher in stagflation. What do you think about tariffs, and what do you think about how all this is going to turn out?
Well, I think it's going to turn out badly, and I'm just aghast, and I'm conservative. I was on the board of the National Taxpayers Union when we tried to pass a balanced budget amendment several million years ago. Tariffs are taxes, and the tax falls on someone, usually the consumer. So they aren't what our president says they are, and they will not materialize in the way he expects them to. We have a president who has a very transactional and extremely simplistic view of how the world actually works. And it's just not as simple and transactional as he imagines it to be. But a lot of the, apparently a significant voting public believes that. Fortunately, a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, will be voted out of office if this bill passes, because everybody will say, we're done with you.
Do you think there's a chance this bill would not pass?
I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball. But I started to tell you earlier, in 1988, I was trying to find a column. I got a phone. I'd written a negative column about the Catastrophic Care Act of 1988 because it was going to put a tax on seniors to pay for long-term care insurance, and it was going to really be big. Well, apparently the 535 don't remember it because when I wrote the column, I got an angry call from Senator Lloyd Bentsen. I've never had a call from a senator before. I'm an ink-stained wretch. I don't expect such things. But he was really annoyed that I didn't like his bill or misunderstood it. Well, lots of people misunderstood it, and later in 1989, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee was booed out of one of his town halls and then surrounded by angry seniors in his car, and they were threatening him, banging on his car. And the Catastrophic Care Act of 1988 was repealed in late 1989. So I think, I don't think the nitwits that we have in office understand what they are unleashing in this particular bill.
This is Bob Brooks.
But they will hear. They will hear.
Yes, I'm sure they will. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. We're talking to Scott Burns. If you want more information about Scott, go to scottburns.com. What do you think about this whole idea of all the pressure that President Trump is putting on Jay Powell to lower interest rates? To me, it's a very bad move, especially at where we are right now, by to lower rates by 50 basis points or something like that.
Lowering interest rates is one of the things that has compounded our current problems. Congress has done things in the past that have just caused all kinds of actions. We lowered interest rates after the internet bust, and that put a lot of bad money in place. We lowered interest rates in the financial crisis, and it hasn't helped in particular. So our president is just being the guy he is, which is, he likes to push people around. He likes to be a bully. If you get the sense that I don't like him, I don't. But I haven't liked him, since he was in his 20s. He represents just, he represents nothing Christian.
Scott, are you there?
Sorry, did I offend all listeners? I'm here.
Oh no, we had a little problem with the mic there. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I think you lower interest rates at this point in the game where we are right now, and you open the door to a lot of problems. It just makes you talk a lot about in your writings about keeping things simple. Well, it is simple math. You lower the interest rates, and we're gonna have problems.
All we'll do is invite people to borrow more and maybe extend them further. But we already have a significant number of people on the edge. Where we can look at the column on who's responsible. 40+% of the population is very responsible with money, and lots of 40% of people don't even have a home mortgage, don't have a home equity credit line, probably don't have a car loan, and they're in great shape. But we've always been a kind of a bimodal distribution. We've got the people that understand money and respect that they need to save, and we've got people who believe in the tooth fairy, and they're always with us. There will always be people who overextend, who don't get it, who are foolish, and then there'll always be people who need a good Samaritan, who need help, regardless, who get into difficult situations through no fault of their own.
Well, you said in that article that if you look at the test of prudence, isn't it how many trillions it's not about how many trillions we owe, it's how much of our income goes to making payments on our debts. If it's a crushing burden, you wrote this, if it's a crushing burden, we're in trouble. If it's easily handled, we're fine. How do we look today? What do you think about that?
Well, many people today look good, and almost everybody looks better than their government. And if this bill goes through, we're talking about a much larger increase, so that government payments, interest payments, will be taking a larger and larger portion of all federal tax revenue. If they actually had any guts, what they would do is let the earlier tax cuts go away. Remember, they're just scheduled to go away. Mm-hmm. That was a trick from the earlier Trump tax cuts. Just put them in place, and then everybody would assume you can't increase taxes. But if you look at our economy, in the 1950s, we had a much higher growth rate than we have today, and we also had much higher tax rates. So explain that. How is it? We've got both parties acting as though, not cutting taxes is suicidal. Well, we may be at a place where the only thing to do is let taxes go up. That doesn't mean you're going to encourage welfare. It doesn't mean you're going to be giving money away willy-nilly. It just means that we're in a situation where we have accumulated so much government debt that we've got to do something to hold it at bay. And maybe that will require higher taxes.
It seems to me, Scott, there's a lot of things we could be doing to start going down the road. I don't know if we can ever solve this problem. We just crossed $37 trillion of debt, which is unbelievable. But it seems like from the estate taxes down to the income taxes, I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to have to raise taxes. And I guess Trump's idea of lowering interest rates is the idea of we're going to grow our way out of this.
Well, yeah, but that's never worked, and that was mentioned in the column. It's a constant thing. In the two books on generational accounting that I co-wrote with Larry Kotlikoff, we went through that whole thing very carefully. It simply doesn't work. You may increase tax revenue, but you will not increase it enough to pay for the tax cuts. It's thoroughly established. There's no argument from any reputable economist in the United States that would say, oh yes, these do. Only the disreputable economists, of which there are quite a number, will make that argument. And of course, the people who believe that kind of malarkey because they need to.
Well, you drew a comparison in one of your articles comparing today and the dot-com bust. I've always felt there are similarities. Is that potentially where you think we're headed in this particular cycle?
We now have a concentration in the S&P 500 of technology market cap. I think it's reached the highest yet, something like 30% of all the values.
34%.
Is it 34%?
I believe it is.
And that's gigantic. And it's all based on the promise of AI, artificial intelligence, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, what is artificial intelligence going to do? Well, there was a news article today about how Amazon now had, I think it was like 40% of their labor costs had been, their factory costs had been eliminated by robots. So and Amazon is a very large employer. So that doesn't bode well for future employment at a factory or warehouse level, and it's already displacing people. The head of Salesforce bragged the other day that something like 30% of their functions were being replaced by artificial intelligence. And whether AI, I think, can function in a lot of ways. It can certainly handle a lot of situations that are determined, that where a lot of contingencies are under consideration.
Hey, Scott, I'm gonna have to let you go. That's my signal. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. ScottBurns.com is where you go to get more information. Today we are all out of time. Until we do, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.